Welcome to the Cabrera Lab Podcast.
Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good.
How come? What is with the hello?
Phantasmographic.
Phantasmographic.
Yep.
Like making up words.
I do.
Phantasmographic. So I get the what's the ma and the graphic?
Miraculous and graphical.
I have something that I have been thinking about, my gosh, for probably a decade
Whoa.
and working on slowly, but making progress on for a decade.
Wow.
That
This sounds serious.
systems, well, it could be so many things.
So many things.
Systems thinking, DSRP has all been really, really helpful.
Yes.
And that is the concept of self-management.
Oh.
That includes things like to-do lists, calendars, self-care, routines, how you manage your day-to-day schedule. I think people would love to know how to really get some. I think these things they seem impossible. And we get into these patterns with them, and it feels really difficult to slow down and start to understand how to manage ourselves better. Because I know a lot of high performers, and I will tell you, I would say probably 8 out of 10 when you talk to them have something they're struggling with in the realm of self-management.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very common problem.
So I would say there's kind of 3 rules that I use. One is just structure. Strangely enough, for neurotypical or neurodiverse people or ADHD or autism, like the ability to, you almost have to get overly good at structure in order to compensate for the kinds of things that your brain doesn't do well.
Because you don't have your you don't have control of your
Yeah,
focus.
you don't always have control of your focus and things like that, or your attention. And so, strangely enough, if an ADD person hyper focuses on structure, then they can get very good at it. Even though in the beginning they were probably not as good as just a normative person might be at focus and structure and stuff like that. So the first thing I would say is you have to have structure. The second thing I would say is you use rules. You create rules for yourself. And the third thing I would say is you want to distribute your intelligence. And that means putting those structures and those rules in other physical places in your environment, so that you can free up cognitive space, but not forget the structure, the rules, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we can walk through different examples of those kinds of things. But, in a nutshell, those are kind of 3 of the things that are helpful.
I think in a previous episode, there's one example that's really easy. In a previous episode, we talked about to-do lists. And I talked about how my to-do list was actually so oppressive, and I was feeling terrible about myself at the end of the days because I would never finish my whole to-do list. And then we talk about how, we changed my mental model of the to-do list to be like, to what have I done today? And in some ways, we can illustrate structure and rules and all those things through and distributed intelligence just through a to-do list, because you've helped me put systems in place. I'm not perfect, but I'm much better.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so we can start with structure. So a lot of people, let's say you're working on a project and you're trying to think about what are all the things that I have to take into account. So you're having this like beautiful mind moment of all the things. And I would say for most people, that maybe looks like this. Maybe they see it this way, or maybe they see it in a list. But it's a bunch of stuff, and I would call that structure.
Okay.
For another set of people, that thing, that beautiful minding might look like this, right? Where they see an interconnected space of things and they see all the connections. And it's, for neurodivergent people, you see a lot of this, right? And what happens in this case, in both cases, this happens, but to different degrees based on your, brain, capacities and things like that. What you end up doing is, in order to keep that picture in mind, you're putting a tremendous amount of your minute-by-minute resources in holding that picture.
Yes.
So, for example, this structure here can be easily converted to a list. This structure can also be converted to a list. But one of the things you have to do, which is an absolutely fundamental thing in DSRP, is that the relationships themselves are nodes.
Right.
Which means you don't just take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You take 1, 2, 3, 9, right. And then 10, and then 11, and then 12, and then 13, 14, 15, right? 16, 17. So now I have a list of 17 things.
Right, and then people are saying, wait a minute.
That's a lot of things.
I'm overwhelmed with
17 you're overwhelmed.
Things. Right.
But this is the first thing. Like a lot of students have this problem, right? Let's say you miss a week of school, and you've got like 35 assignments, and you don't even know that you have 35 assignments. You just have this tremendous anxiety that there's like this ball of stuff, and it's overwhelming. It's too much stuff. Yeah. So same kind of basic thing that you have in your work environment. You have this thing that feels like it weighs 200 pounds.
Yes. As
soon as you can break it down and go, actually it's 7, it's 20 things that weigh 10 pounds.
Right.
You can start to breathe a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing I do is just get the number. Like, how many things do I need to do? Okay, it's 20, let's say. 20 is a big number, but it's less overwhelming than 20 things bundled as one big heavy thing that's undifferentiated.
Right, because you can't approach that one big, you don't even know where to start.
You don't even know where to start. It's just heavy. It's just heavy. It creates anxiety. It creates all kinds of stress, and you don't even know how to get started, right?
Yeah.
So now that I know that the number is 20, I can think about, okay, in all these things, this whole thing, this list of things, how long do I have to do it? When do these 20 things need to be done? So that becomes kind of your timeline. That could be one day, it could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks, quarter. It could be a whole quarter, whatever.
Yep.
Well, so now I'm like, okay, so if it's 5 days, 20 things, I got to do 4 things a day.
And that seems more manageable.
Yeah. Now it gets me to, I can win the day. Just win the day. Get 4 things done 5 days in a row. I win the day.
Right.
And that's where you want to get to. You want to get away from, I've got this huge ball of blackness, which is overwhelming, to, I got to complete 4 things today.
Right.
And then start working. And there's some prioritization. There's the Eisenhower matrix. There's all kinds of different things that you can use to do that. But the general thing is know the number. You don't even really have to remember. I don't have to keep, when I know the number, I don't have to keep all the detail of what each of these tasks is. I just know I've written them down. There's 20 of them.
That's the distributed part.
Yes.
Right. So you've gotten to the structure, and then we haven't really got, I guess one of the rules is pay as much attention to the relationships as you are the nodes in your list.
Yeah. The idea being that if you're this kind of thinking, the thing that you then get held up in is, if I only list the nodes, then I'm not capturing the relationships, the dynamics. In science, we call this kind of like the structure.
Yeah.
And this the dynamics. Right? So the dynamics are all the relationships, and the structure is like the structural things. That all breaks down because, dynamics are also structural and structures are also dynamical. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say this is the structure and this is the dynamics. So at this point, what we want to do is say, if I feel like I have to keep this dynamical picture in mind, that's going to make it so that I can't win the day, because I'm spending 40% of my energy just trying to hold this picture, just trying to hold all these things in the picture.
Right.
Well, if I know there's 20 things in the picture, now I can list that on a piece of paper. That's distribution. I'm distributing my intelligence to a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Right? I got 20 things. Now I don't have to remember what those things are. I just know there's 20.
Well, and that frees up your cognitive, your energy, your cognitive load, all of that. I mean, so let's just talk about rules for, like one of the things, I now have something that I have always with me on my phone, like a little app that I use, because I used to write it on stickies. Yeah. And then I'd lose the stickies, and then I would be stressed about that.
Yeah, that brings up almost another principle of the 3 that I mentioned, which is keep it simple. Simplicity is best. So if you have one of these apps that's like, you need the date and you need the this and you need the that, and it's too much, like the simple things are best. So if you like an app, great, use the app. But if going to your phone and opening your phone and finding the app and remember, if that's too hard, just have a sheet of paper.
Yep.
And write it down.
Yep.
You know, like use the simplest possible version of what you need.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of these softwares and stuff, they're just like super over-engineered.
Yeah.
And super complex. And they, you got to click 17 times to get one thing entered. Well, that's a lot harder than number one, blah, blah, blah. Number two, blah, blah, blah.
I actually took a time management class. And it was funny because I was I really wanted to learn how to manage my time better. And I sat through this class, and this woman, was showing us her system. And the amount of time it took me to understand the color coding, the software, the this, that, I was like, by the time I could have done 10 things on my to-do list in the time that it took me just to understand it. It was just so over-engineered.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you need to spend an hour a day on managing your time through this software. And I thought, well, think about the opportunity cost of that hour.
Yep.
So then I go to literally a checklist.
Yeah.
And it's on my phone. And it's so much better.
You want to decrease the friction it takes to do all this. And good software design does that, but there's not a lot of good software design out there. So,
yes.
Like in the gym, for example, I don't want to think about the number of reps, the weight, the number of times I've done, the number of sets that I've done, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't want to think about that. I want to be thinking about other things. Mm-hmm. I think about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I have a multi-pronged abacus that I use, and it's dry erase on the side, so I can put the exercises in and blah blah blah, and I could do different things on different days. But I just move when I'm done with a set. I just move the little abaci or the little beads.
The beads, yeah.
And then I don't have to. And then I can just look. Oh, I've done that. Okay.
So you don't have to keep track.
I don't have to keep track.
Which is very stressful to try to have to keep track.
Yeah, it's too much. I forget. So that's a form of distribution. You're distributing. You're getting that stuff somewhere else that is part of your routine, and you're distributing that intelligence to free up capacity to kind of focus on the thing you need to focus on, which is to win the day eventually. What we want to do is just win the day.
Because the micro makes the macro.
Yeah.
Because if you win every day,
it's gonna
over time.
You're gonna win Super Bowls in yards, not touchdowns.
True.
You just keep making yards.
Sometimes the sports things.
It's not games. Meaning you don't win the Super Bowl all at once. You win the Super Bowl 1 yard.
And you don't get a touchdown. You have to get the yards to get the touchdown.
You got to get the yards to get the first down. You got to get the first downs to get the touchdowns. You got to get the touchdowns to get the games. You got to get the games that we get the.
Yeah.
So you got to win the day.
Like in hockey, it would be you don't get the goals without the passes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to translate.
Hockey's a little less incremental than football. Anyway, whatever metaphor you want to use, baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
In terms of, so we've got the structure, the rules, the simplicity.
So I would say in terms of structure, DSRP actually gives you like this remarkable ability to be really good at structuring, right? And so because everything you do in DSRP can be reducible to embodiment, right? So you can distribute, in order to distribute your intelligence, you have to be able to embody your intelligence because it's got to be embodied in like a thing. Right? The beads. Each bead means something. A string of beads means something. A row of beads means something. So in order to get the structure of your thinking to be embodied or distributed, you have to embody it in something. And DSRP does that automatically. Like everything in DSRP is embodiable.
Yeah.
So that really makes it really powerful. And then you have your, keeping it simple, kind of a rule. That's more like a rule. And then you have rules. And the rules are these things that you just don't violate.
Yeah.
So
that's the hard part.
One of my rules is I don't have more than 20 emails in my box at any time. I try to either archive or delegate or delete or deal with the emails.
But once.
And touch it once is another rule. Touch it once. So a lot of people, they'll open an email, read it, then they'll come back to it. Now I've touched it twice. Then they'll wait, and then they'll come back. Now I've touched it 3 times. I try to, if I'm going to open that email,
You're going to deal with
I'm going to deal with it. And if I'm not going to deal with it, I don't open it.
Yeah, so that gets to the other thing I was thinking about, which is, I don't know, for lack of a better word, time management, routine, sort of. So yes, in an ideal world, I mean, I know because I do this all the time. I open an email, I'm like, oh gosh, I really need to answer this, but I've got this other thing. So I'm not really ordering or structuring my time in the right way. So for example, one thing that a lot of high performers write about is they dedicate the first hour of their day to just dealing with that, catching up with email, focusing on first things first, and then they get into, and they do that early, usually.
Yeah, I would say that a little different because there's a tremendous pitfall there,
Ooh,
right?
Okay, good.
So the reason that I do the email thing is to free up cognitive load, not because my email determines what's important.
Right.
Imagine if anyone could walk into your office at any time and distract you. That's what email is. Right? Like anyone in the world could walk into your office and distract you at any point in time.
And often it's like 3 people at once talking
like
to you.
20 people. It's coming from everywhere. So email is very dangerous if you use that as your to-do list.
Yes.
Right? Which a lot of people do. They just go like, have I answered this? Have I answered that? Did I do this? Did I do that? That means everyone else is deciding what you're doing, what you're working on.
And prioritizing
your work for you.
Yeah.
So you never want to do that. Don't make email your to-do list.
Right.
What I do is when there's too many emails in my email box, I start to feel stress. And that stress affects my cognitive capacity. So I deal with it in order to offload the stress.
Right.
And I do it all in one, I just kind of, I get rid of it. Not because necessarily all of it's important, but all of it is creating stress.
Yeah.
The sheer number of it is in my consciousness. So be very careful when you're dealing with email. Why are you dealing with it? Are you dealing with it because you're letting other people set your agenda, your to-do list, your actions? Or are you dealing with it because it's a thing that's getting in the way of your effectiveness or capacity?
Or like you're saying, it's distracting.
It's a distractor.
It's just constantly distracting.
Yeah.
That's why when people are really working, they put that focus thing on. And nothing business and all that.
So you definitely want, I mean, the other thing that precedes all of this is having very, very clear goals, whatever you want to call it. We call it vision and mission. But, all of this is established by the frop of, does this serve the goals that I'm trying to reach?
Right.
And if it doesn't, don't do it. There's other rules. The rules you kind of have to make up yourself based on what's important to you. Like, there's a bunch of different things out there that are pretty powerful, like, do it or delegate it or delete it, that kind of thing. Those are just simple rules. Another rule that I make is I don't want balls to drop. So I think of it like a deck with spaces in between the deck, and you throw a bunch of balls on it. And it's fine for all the balls to sit on the deck and not be dealt with right away. But what I don't want is for balls to drop under the deck. Right?
Yeah.
And so, when you have something on your to-do list, never mark it off unless it's actually done. Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
Don't think, oh, that's basically done, click. And also, depending on the person you delegate to, if that person's like total high integrity person, I know that they're going to get it done, then I might put it off my list. And that's a wonderful person to have. Those are rare people. Right. But if there's any doubt that thing could get done, I keep it on my list until I know that they did it.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's a simple rule that I have that I just use.
Yeah, so I also think there's another little trick that sometimes people don't. I found myself falling into this trap, and then I got myself out of it, which is a lot of different softwares have this, done, in progress, da-da-da-da-da-da. So I had in my system things to do, and then things that you're working on but that you can't finish right away, you put in this list called in progress. But what ultimately happens is you stop paying attention to that list.
That's the problem.
And those are the balls that will get dropped because they're not. So now I don't use that. I leave them in my to-do because they bug me. Like they're in my face.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, why is this not done yet? Totally. Even if it's in progress, even if it's a month down the road. If I move it to that other
100%.
parking lot area, I will not remember it. I will not go back to it.
Yep. And I love the one that you just said is such a great one, which is, when something is going to bug you, those are some of the best things.
Right.
If I know like this thing's going to bug me, I'm going to embody that. I'm going to get it right front and center so that every time I walk by it, I go,
yeah,
that thing, I got to figure out that thing. And there's certain to-dos that are, I call it sometimes ditch digging. There's certain to-dos that are ditch digging. And people think, oh, well, ditch digging is hard work. It is hard work, but it's not the hardest work. Ditch digging is very easy. Like, if you think about it, it's just you're ready to put the effort in. You dig the ditch. You know where the ditch is. The tasks that bug me, and I use that technique with, are the ones like, I don't even know if that goal or that task is possible yet. Like, I got to get clarity on what it even is.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a little bit like saying, I know I have to dig a ditch, but I don't even know where I have to dig the ditch. I don't know whose approval I got to get to dig the ditch.
But you want to dig that.
I know I want to dig it, and I know it has to be dug somewhere, and I know it has some spec to it, how deep, how long, where.
Yeah.
But I don't know where, how deep, or how long.
Yeah.
It needs to be. And so that is a hard task. So I think of tasks differently. Like digging the ditch, a lot of people would think that's a lot of work, but it really is just work. It's effort. It's energy.
Yeah.
To me, that's a lot easier task than a task that is like, question mark? How do we do this thing?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by STSI, the Systems Thinking Standards Institute.
Yes, super excited to work with STSI, raising the standard for 8 billion systems thinkers. Science-based standards, training, the professional systems thinking credential, accreditation for organizations, the systems thinking or thinker toolkit. And so I really encourage folks to go to stsi.pro, take the trainings, get the credentials, get your organization accredited, get the toolkit.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Help us get to 8 billion.
And it's a 501c3 nonprofit.
Don't forget that.
It's a great partner.
I think prioritization is not easy for a lot of people. And you had mentioned the Eisenhower matrix. And also we've talked before, you and I, personally about some of the things when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And you're like, well, and I say, but everything feels urgent and important all at the same time. But there's this limited capacity of a day. So what's the secondary thing you do if you're in that space where you don't know how to get a footing into, for lack of a better word, like order of operations from what's the other perspective that we can look at it from?
Yeah, I mean, the way I do it is through fropping. Fropping is framing and stopping. How do you frame all the things you're working on? What's the frame? So it's a perspective. And also, how would I know when to stop working on it? In a sense, it's like the spec or whatever it is in different areas. But fropping, to me, is the thing that governs everything. Like I said, having a clear vision and mission, that's why we developed the MCL and all that kind of work.
Yep.
Having a clear vision and mission makes, whether it's your own personal vision that you're working inside of an organization that also has a vision and mission, or whether it's you're in charge of an organization and that vision and mission is also your personal. So there's kind of a personal thing going on here, right? Like because you're not just a cog in a machine. You're a human being that wants certain things in your life. So what you want to do is get real clear on what you want personally and real clear on whatever the want is professionally, right? And bring that into a single frop.
Yes.
Right? And that's why like DSRP helps you do that, because a perspective isn't just one thing. A perspective could be a whole system of things, and that whole system is used as a perspective. Right. So a frop is usually a part whole system with even some relationships, all of which has been turned into a perspective. We call that S to P move. And that perspective governs everything. In other words, those are the rose-colored glasses that we look at your list, your structuring and dynamics, all of these things that we're talking about, all get filtered through that thing.
Yeah.
And so that thing tells you, that thing prioritizes for you. That little object is the prioritizing scheme.
let's say I'm going to so if everything feels urgent and important, I'm going to prioritize those things that are either client-facing or are holding other people up on my team in terms of progressing their work. So that's another perspective you can put on that.
Yeah, you can put all those kinds of perspectives on it, and for sure that's effective. But to the point you're making, if everything feels urgent and important all the time, then you have a job that is putting out fires.
Yes.
And if you're not a fireman,
that's not a good idea.
That's not good. With the exception of firemen, whose job it is to do that, because they got called to everybody's fires, right?
Yeah.
But if your job isn't a fireman, then you shouldn't be putting out fires all the time, right? Unless you're like the analogous fireman in an organization where it's your job to be called out to those emergencies.
Right.
But if every single thing on your list is urgent and important, and it actually is, you don't just feel that it is, but it actually is.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Then you should be looking at your capacital systems, because something you're doing is causing everything to be urgent and important.
Yes,
So I would back up from that, and I would take a step back, and I would look at, it's not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable for me to just be in an endless barrage of urgent and important.
Yeah, so you need to take a step back and really question some of the distinctions you're making about that stuff. Like, are these things really important?
Yes.
Are they really urgent?
Are they somebody else's urgent that they're trying to make my urgent?
Right.
Or are they actually urgent and actually important?
Yeah, and depending on the kind of job you have, some things could be actually really urgent, and some things could be labeled urgent just because people want to move them faster, even if that's not necessarily possible.
And just the way we interact as people, the thing that I'm trying to get you to do is urgent, right? So I want to make it urgent for you, right? And so everybody that's coming at you is going to be like, this is the most important. It's just like our students have this problem a lot. Every professor is asking them to do something, and to each professor, the different things are the most important. And the student's like, well, how do I prioritize this? Every professor thinks their thing is the most important.
Right.
Well, you should be thinking about what are my personal goals in my study, and so just as an analogy, I don't take the personal out of anything.
What do you mean?
Well, I think there's this whole thing about separate the personal from the professional. I think that's a gig that companies want us to do, right?
You mean
right? They want you to divorce the personal from the professional so that they can say this is the way you should behave and these are the things you should care about. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but I'm still a person, and I'm going to get, unless you're taking care of me for life, which you're probably not. I gotta make sure that my personal goals and my professional goals are in alignment. Otherwise,
well, and ironically, people will get more out of 100%. People. I don't mean it out. Like, people perform better. Humans perform better in environments that are more aligned in that
100%. If you're a leader of people, and you're checking in and going, what are your personal goals versus what are we saying your professional kinds of things have to be? And if those two things are paralleling or in alignment, that's good leadership, because then you're really tapping into the person's deep incentive to go in if both of these are at the very least going north.
Yes.
Right? If this is going, southwest and this is going north, that's a bad situation to be in as a leader. You need to find a way to get people's personal incentives and in alignment with their professional goals and incentives.
Yes, and that's why you and I, when we're out on the road, are constantly railing against the concept of human resources and the fact that people are moving towards talent management and more developmental kind of.
Yeah, I don't think any human wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm so excited to get to work and be a resource. Right. I'm like, oil or something. You're going to just squeeze me for all my human juice and then make something out of it, right? Like, I don't think anybody really is motivated by that.
I would be surprised.
And if you look at, it should be very concerning if you look at engagement rates across organizations. It's very expensive, and we tend to treat engagement as like this externality, an other.
Right.
we don't realize the cost of that externality. If people are not engaged in what they're doing, and vision, for example, a clear vision is
the biggest indicator.
The biggest indicator of engagement, true authentic engagement, not strategic compliance and things like that, but authentic engagement. That's going to make your organization, you're going to get everything that you want organizationally as a leader if people are engaged with the vision. That's why vision's so important, because it not only sets a clear North Star, it increases each agent in the system's engagement.
Which is what you want, because over time, all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the other thing I was thinking about, because you and I were talking about this the other day, all of what we've just talked about relative to like to-do lists also applies to time management. So, because you and I have talked about my calendar, and so people probably, if they've watched, know that I'm definitely neurotypical. I'm definitely managed by deadlines and calendars. It's so much so that it's become a running joke in the house. Yes. You are very different.
Yeah, in contrast, I mean, I'm quite literally time blind. That's what in neurodivergent circles we call it, time blind, which means like time is not one of the things, except in abstract terms like this, like, I've got 2 weeks to get this done. I understand that kind of time, like deadline time. But the rest of it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, which is interesting. Well, that should be a whole nother episode, because there's a whole other...
Time blindness is a real thing.
Yeah, we should talk about that longer another time.
It's a gift and a curse, because it means that calendars don't really make sense, but you're also in flow all the time.
Yes. So that's interesting, because you're in flow a lot.
Yeah.
And I am not.
I'm in flow more than I'm not in flow.
Right, and I have to what you've actually taught me is I have to actually use the calendar and that structure to create space for that flow.
Yes.
Right? I have to create space for self-care. I have to, because maybe I'm the one that's the problem, because I'm pretty limited.
I don't think it's a problem. I just think people are different. We're just wired different. And for those that don't know, flow is a scientific idea that was created by Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote an amazing book and did amazing science.
The book is called Flow.
Yeah, the book is called Flow.
It's a great book.
It's that moment where you're kind of like, you lose sense of time because you're so into what you're doing and things are just kind of coming naturally. It's almost like you're in this flow state.
Yeah.
And people love being in flow state. I mean, that's where
you're like performing at your best at that moment. So I've been working a lot on managing my daily to-do list. And now what I'm trying to do is manage creating space so I know that I'm driven by the calendar, and I have these constraints that I butt up against in reality. And so now I'm trying to apply what I've learned in the to-do world, these structures, these rules, all of that, to the actual physical time management.
Our society really encourages us to be busy.
Yes.
And I don't see any value whatsoever in being busy. I think, you get to parties and stuff and people brag about how busy they are. And I always see that as like, oh, you don't have control over your life. So,
which is why you don't have all the parties.
Yeah, that's why they don't invite me back.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly. So my goal is not to be busy. My goal is to have space where I can think deeply about the things that I want to do and then execute and be effective. And so I think we have to change our relationship to busy. That's one thing. And especially with calendar folks, like there is sort of a what is it? Like you get a badge if you're busy. If I'm busier than you, if I've had a busier week, like somehow I'm going to get a.
Well, it's like you're smarter because you're busier. Right. You're better because you're busier. But it's not true.
No, I do not want to be busy. I want to be effective, but I don't want to be busy.
Yeah.
And the second thing is a lot of times when we use calendar-based things and that, what we tend to try to do is we try to fit, like we sometimes call them Legos, like Legos are tasks. It's like you're trying to fit 40 pounds of Legos into a 20-pound bag. Yes. And that creates busyness. And there's a huge difference between effective and busy.
Yes.
A huge difference.
Yes.
And the problem I think that we're having oftentimes in society is not that this is like the biggest problem in society by any means, but we've made busy synonymous with effective.
Right.
And it's not. There's possibly no relationship between the two. You could be entirely busy. Like, for example, if I used my email as my to-do list, I could be busy all day long, doing.
Right.
But totally ineffective.
Yes.
And it would be completely run by just all the people emailing me constantly. And I would just go, oh, I got that one, I got that one, I got that one. I'm busy. And it's just like that. It's like trying to stop the ocean.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's never going to be an end to the ocean.
No.
You're just going to keep having waves come in.
It's funny, too, because when I was actually a student in grad school, I went into one of my advisors' offices, and there were just piles of stuff. And it was like there was this tiny little carve out of where he would sit at his desk, and there was just stuff everywhere. And I said, oh, you have a lot of stuff. And he said, anybody with a clean desk isn't working that hard. And I thought, I'm not sure that's right, because think about all of that physical entropy and distraction and all of those stacks are like things to get to.
Yeah.
Literally, things to get to, things you want to read, things you need to do. And I thought, well, so I think we need to sort of push back on some of these notions, like busy is not effective. Messy desk doesn't mean you're working really hard. It just means you're messy.
Yeah, I mean, again, like different people have different styles. So I'm not saying you couldn't be busy and effective.
True.
You could be. I'm just saying busy in and of itself is not necessarily correlated with effective.
Right.
And messy isn't correlated with, having a genius mind or being smart or whatever.
Right.
It's some people are messy, some people aren't. Some people, are busy, some people aren't. I think we should just challenge the notion, because I think sometimes we think I'm working. Mm-hmm. And you are. You're working. Working is the expenditure of energy. You might be expending a tremendous amount of energy, and so we call that work.
Yeah.
But how effective is the work?
Right. And also I think there's a thing about, one of the things that I've noticed about you that I'm trying to mimic a little bit is awareness of when you have the energy in a day to really do your bigger thinking, your harder work.
Yes.
And making this, blocking that space, and then having another space for things that you need to get done, but that don't require as much of your cognitive load or focus.
Yeah, for me, like 3 to 7 is
a.m.
Yeah, 3 to 7 a.m. is like my space just for me time. Mm-hmm. And it's before the kids wake up, and it's before we have breakfast together and all that kind of stuff.
It's
and
quiet.
Then after breakfast, the kids, school, all that. And then from 8 to 12, I don't schedule things typically.
Right.
Yeah. And that's my serious work time. And then 12 to 3, 4 is kind of like maybe I'll take some meetings. Mm-hmm. Because again, you don't need very much to be in meetings. Like meetings aren't like super high cognitive tasks.
Yeah.
Right. And then 4 to 5, I'll do just like dumb work. Mm-hmm. Right. Because by then my brain isn't quite as sharp.
Kind of more busy work.
Yeah. Well, like if I have to do something that's kind of repetitive or, move this to that and do it again and again and again.
Yeah.
That's perfect for that period.
Yeah.
And then dinner, and then after work is kind of catching up on a couple things once the kids are, situated and all that.
All parents have that that block off in the morning where their kids, and then they have the dinner time, and then they go back to work after kids are in bed, especially people with little kids.
Totally.
Because there's no other space.
Totally.
Other than that.
But again, back to those rules, we have some rules. One of our rules is we don't miss breakfast together, and one of the rules is we don't miss dinner together. Yep. So those are inviolable. So you decide. I'm not saying those are the ones, although the research shows that families that eat together and talk together, things go better.
Kids have better outcomes.
Kids have better outcomes and stuff like that. You should have these things that are inviolable. Having space for yourself and taking care of yourself and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Having space with your loved ones or whatever. Those are you don't violate those.
Right. And the second you do, things go awry.
Yeah, they kind of...
You slip back into old habits.
They build capacity.
Yeah.
Sleep. We're seeing, for example, in PTSD research and things like that, and the protocol that we're working on, make space for sleep, sometimes you can't get sleep, but you've got to make a space for sleep, right? So if you need 6 hours of sleep, in the beginning stages, you might not get 6 hours of sleep, but you still have to create space for 6 hours of sleep. And 6 hours of sleep might take 9 hours of space.
Yeah. You
might start with 6 hours of space and only get 1 hour of sleep. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. You gotta work with where you're at.
You can start somewhere.
But if you're only going to get 3 hours of sleep a night, again, we're talking about people with PTSD and things that are having trouble sleeping and all that, and you only create 3 hours of space, the chances of you getting actually 3 hours of sleep, which is like the minimum of having any functionality, is pretty low. So you might have to create 5 hours of space to get 3 hours of sleep.
And right? I think the sort of overarching thing about this is you need to create systems to manage these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then you have to have a clear understanding of how you're going to manage those systems. And the way that for me, I know I make rules. Like if I think of something that I need to put on my to-do list, because I have it on my phone, I stop for 2 seconds, I put it on my to-do list.
Yep. And then it's not bugging
me. It's not bugging me. And also it's like a fail-safe, right? Same thing if I'm at the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I forgot I need to do this. I will just literally take the minute to put it on the list, because if I don't, the opportunity cost of that, the
totally.
And then in your day, like making space based on when you have the need for energy and focus and deep thinking reduces those switching costs if you don't make those spaces.
Yeah.
Because switching costs are huge.
They're huge.
I mean, if you added up switching costs over the course of a day for a person who is not really sort of thinking about those ebbs and flows, it's probably almost as much as the actual work time.
Yeah, and I would say a couple things about those things. Dr. Andy Gelpin, who's a performance specialist, he's a sharp guy. He's mostly in fitness and working out and stuff like that. But he says, the best workout is the one you'll do.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just so true. Like the best workout is the one that you're going to do, period. Mm-hmm. So don't worry about all the people out there that are saying use the Eisenhower matrix and the Trello, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Figure out the systems that work for you and get good at them.
Yeah.
Practice them, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it doesn't need to be complicated, right? I mean, people think Michael Jordan and LeBron James and all these people, all these superstar people somehow are working at a different level of complexity. And in one sense they are, but actually what they're doing is they're just super hyper focused on the fundamentals.
Yes.
Like, so get your fundamentals right. Mm-hmm. And one of the fundamentals is stop multitasking.
Yes.
Stop multitasking.
It doesn't
just work. If you've got headphones in and you're writing and you're doing, you're going to suck at all three. You're going to suck at all three. So in the old days we used to say in mountaineering, like a Swiss Army knife is bad at everything.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, be good at the thing that you're doing. Get really locked in. Wash the glass like a baby Buddha. Like, I take real joy in being efficient in really menial things. And so I can do those things very fast because, fast, what is it?
Slow, smooth.
Slow, smooth is fast. Mm-hmm. And so if you slow it down and be like, okay, I can move through this very basic thing in very smooth ways, then I can do it incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And then because I'm focused on doing it and I'm not trying to multitask and do all these things, I think a lot of this stuff is just society kind of telling us how to do things, and you got to find your way of doing things.
Yeah.
And get good at that way. So ignore all the different things, adopt, if something sounded good.
The principles, not the details.
Yeah, get the principles of what I'm putting out there is, and build a system that works for you.
I think the other thing is just make progress.
Yeah,
I think we have such huge expectations of ourselves. It's like, just if you're making progress, I'm making progress on these things I've been working on for a while.
Yeah.
That's a win. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that probably covers most of it, yeah?
I think so. I think it's great.
That's a wrap.